Hi, my name is Mike Conley, owner of East Bay Property Management here in Fremont, California, and I want to welcome you to this 30-minute webinar entitled The 12 Steps to Successfully Managing Your Rental Home. So, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the owner of East Bay Property Management, and our company manages about 500 East Bay properties. Most of them are rental homes, but I do manage a number of apartments. I'm a UC Berkeley grad all the way back to 1982. My parents used to look at my grades and say, well, at least we know he's not cheating. I've been managing properties since I got out of college, 1982. I grew up in Fremont. I'm a licensed broker. To be a property manager in California, you have to be a realtor, and every realtor has to work under a broker, but I'm my own broker. I'm also a licensed appraiser. I'm a fellow landlord. I own several properties in the Central Valley, and I'm a fellow renter. So I know what it's like to rent a property, because our family, we sold our home several years ago in Pleasanton, and I've been renting ever since. So I know both sides of the coin. I'm also a licensed pastor. I was in full-time ministry for several years, and that's important because in property management you need God on your side. So now let me tell you who you are in case you started this webinar wondering who you are. I'm going to tell you. Number one, you're one of 18,000 East Bay landlords that own a rental house. About 95% of you own just one rental house. Oftentimes it was a house that you lived in and then you decided to move to a larger house and you kept that one. About 5% of you own 2 or more rental properties, and you've received little, if any, training on how to manage your rental home. How do I know that? Because if you owned an apartment or a 2 to 4 unit property, you'd be getting solicitation from organizations like the California Apartment Association, who have regular seminars and magazines and conventions that provide training for self-managing landlords. But if you're managing a rental house, you're off the radar. You're getting no training whatsoever. That is why I put on these seminars, live seminars, every 90 days here in my office. And you need to consider yourself an investor. Many of you have a lot of equity in your rental home. Equity that other investors that invest in rental property outside of California would die for. They're buying, homes in the $60,000, $80,000 range in certain parts of the country, and trying to accumulate enough rental homes that equal just the income that you're getting from your one rental house. Now, step number one, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. You need, by the way, all these 12 steps begin with the letter P. The first step is you've got to present a property that's at least slightly above average. So when I speak to an inquiring owner who's looking into my services, the first question I ask is what kind of condition your home is in. Is it in average condition, slightly above average, good, great condition? That's very important. And if it's in average condition, then we need to look at doing some rehab between the tenants. The first thing I look at is the paint. Then we look at the flooring. By the way, when I visit a home that is between tenants, I always bring my rehab board. This is a board that has all my samples on it. Laminate, some of it's waterproof, quartz counters, blinds, baseboards, kitchen cabinets. It's all on my rehab board, and I make my suggestions to the owner. I summarize them in an email with the approximate costs. We're looking at recessed lights, kitchen counters, kitchen cabinets, appliances, bathroom vanity, shower tub, bath and kitchen fixtures, and we're looking at the yards. I prefer with the yard low irrigation yards like rock and bark here with some low irrigation plants. This is going to, in the long run, save you a lot of money on lawn care, because otherwise you're going to have a gardener coming at least twice a month. And you can just see from your neighbors that a lot of people are going with low irrigation. Now, the reason that Rehab is so important is that for every $1 that you invest in rehabbing your house between tenants, you're going to get back at least $1.50 to $2 in increased rents. I can't tell you how many times I walk into a house where the owner has already done the rehab and I say to myself, not to him, oh my gosh, this is overkill. You've done too much rehab. It's not, a lot of the rehab that you've done, you're not going to see in any in increased rent. So the rehab that I recommend always translates to a little more rent. Then also, for instance, if you do a $20,000 rehab with new laminate, new paint, new windows, baseboards, blinds, appliances, that's going to equate to $300 to $400 more per month, and you're going to have that $20,000 paid for in 4 to 5 years, and then everything after that is profit. So nothing makes you more money than rehab. You're also going to add value back to the property. If you do a $20,000 rehab, you're going to add back $30,000 in value to your home, and you're going to attract a higher quality tenant. Why do I say that? Because a good condition home attracts a good tenant. A great home attracts a great tenant, and guess what? An average home is going to attract an average tenant. And life is too short to have average tenants for both you and myself. We always go over with our owners a pre-move-in checklist. And that checklist is 32 items. It covers everything from the rekeying of locks to fresh paint, checking all the appliances, spotless toilets, changing all the light bulbs. These are all items that have to be checked off before a tenant moves in. You don't want, I call it the last 5%. You get 95% there with your home, but you don't do the last 5%. That's the hardest. And it often creates problems when a tenant moves in. He's not going to be happy, and you're going to pay for it in the long run. So you can go to our website for that checklist. It's on our website. Step number 2, you've got to promote the home well. And promoting a home always starts with professional photographs. All of my listings, I have at any one time 10 to 20 listings here in the East Bay, are photographed professionally. I use a real estate photographer out of Walnut Creek named Jay Caldwell. Here's his number here. And he gives dimension to all of my photographs, which you don't get with an iPhone. It really makes a difference. And then I create a strategic ad. I list all the benefits and amenities of the home, but I also list what the tenant must have. So I outline the credit score requirement, the income requirement, and so forth. That prevents me from wasting any time. Then I syndicate the ad on my software to about 25 real estate sites. You can only go to a couple sites, Zillow and Craigslist, but my ads go to about 25 sites. But still, Zillow is where I get most of my inquiries, so that's a good site for you. And I also put up a yard sign. I give a referral fee to, if it's an apartment unit, I give a referral fee to other apartment dwellers there. And if it's a commercial property, I always do a direct mail piece. So do not show the property while it's still occupied by a tenant. You think, oh, I can save rent if I can show the property 2 or 3 weeks before my current tenant moves out. I recommend against that unless the current tenant has a home that's a 9 or a 10 on a 10 scale in terms of showability. Otherwise, you're just going to create a lot of problems for a potential tenant. They're going to have unmet expectations. So promote it well. I love being able to show a property that's vacant and fully clean and rehabbed, the paint's fresh, and being able to say to prospective tenants, what you see is what you get. So step number 3, you want to price the home strategically. So I always start with a rental analysis, and I can perform that for you at no charge. Just email or text me. But I have a software program called Rent Range, and I'm able to type in the address of the home, the bed and bath count, the square footage, the lot size, and then it pulls out 10 comps off of Zillow that are in that neighborhood currently for rent. And then it gives me a median price based on those 10 comps. And what you have to be careful of is not to be deceived by comps on Zillow, because those are all asking rents. They're not actual rents that leases are signed for. A lot of self-managing owners will put a home up for rent for $3,500 when it should only be $3,100, and the home will sit vacant for 4 or 6 weeks, or they'll take a desperate tenant that has a poor credit score that's willing to pay $3,500 just to get into the house. That will always cause problems in the long run. So you want to adjust your price based on your home's amenities. You want to adjust the price based on the season of the year. You can always get $50 to $100 more in the spring or summer than you can in November or December. The last 2 digits of your price should always be $90. So instead of advertising a home for $3,000 a month, advertise it for $29.90. Just the psychological difference, number one, and you're getting in the price filter that a lot of that you would miss otherwise, because a lot of prospective tenants looking for a home will go on to Zillow and say, hey, show me a house under $3,000. And if you're priced at $3,000, you're not going to show up on the grid. So get it at $29.90, just $10 less. And I always like to price a home $50 to $100 below market value, because I'm looking for a tenant with a 700 credit score, great income, great rental history. That kind of tenant deserves a little bit of a break. Don't try to squeeze as much rent as you can out of a tenant. That only causes problems in the long run. Then you want to adjust the price down $50 to $100 every 7 to 10 days. So every Monday I get a hold of all of my owners whose homes I've got listed, and I give them a status report. I let them know we're close to getting it rented. We don't need to adjust the price. I feel we've got traction. It's going to happen this week. Or I may say, you know, this is the probability of renting it at the current price. I give it about a 50% over the next 21 days. But if we lowered $100, I give it a 70%. So I always quantify the price reduction to my owners. So your rental price has nothing to do with some high price comp on Zillow. It has nothing to do with your mortgage. It has nothing to do with your expenses. It has nothing to do with the appreciation or depreciation of your home. It has nothing to do with what you hear from a friend or a neighbor. They're always going to tell you to rent it at a price that's too high, but it has everything to do with multiple comps of actual leases. And that's where I'm intimately familiar with the East Bay in terms of what homes are actually leasing for. And this is where what your rent should be predicated on. Step number 4, pet negotiable. That's the 4th P. And here are 6 reasons why you want to advertise small pet negotiable. By the way, this word negotiable means maybe. Maybe we'll accept a pet, maybe we won't. But even high-end homes, the owners allow me to advertise small pet negotiable because I'm going to get a greater pool of applicants. That's because at least 1/3 of renters looking for a rental home have a little teacup dog. These little dogs 20 pounds or less. So you're opening up your home to a greater pool of applicants. And you're going to make more profit with a small pet. If you're advertising a home at $29.90 small pet negotiable and an identical rental home across the street from you is at $28.90 no pets, your home is going to rent faster at $29.90. That's $100 more in rent each month. If the tenant is there several years, that's several $1,000s in additional rental income for a little pooch. You're also We also get from the tenant a $500 non-refundable pet fee. That's for allowing the pet into the house. You get $500. Tenants are glad to pay it. You're also going to have the tenant there longer. They've done enough studies to show that tenants with a pet stay longer than tenants that don't have a pet. It's always under 20 pounds, one pet only. So if they have multiple pets, no. We always include a pet agreement with our lease. And in that pet agreement, it limits the number to one. The behavior, they can't be barkers. The age, it can't be a puppy, can't be an aggressive breed, under 20 pounds, and it has to have all the correct shots. And then finally, the last reason is you're going to have a happier tenant. Wouldn't you rather have a husband, wife, one child, and a little 20-pound dog than a husband, wife, two kids, and grandma and grandpa staying there a few months out of the year? Not that I discriminate, but I would always recommend advertise small pet negotiable. And they might try to sneak in the pet anyway. If you've been a landlord long enough, you've probably had experience with that. Step number 5, be very picky when you're screening a tenant. Screen, screen, screen. The credit score in my neck of the woods has to be 680 or higher. Do not let a tenant talk you into leasing him a property if he's got a poor credit score. The credit score is an indicator of how well they've handled their financial responsibilities in the past. In addition, they've got a lot to lose if they've got a credit score in the 700s, because if they lose their job and stop paying rent, their credit score is going to be decimated. Second of all, you want to look at their income. For me, it's 3 times the rent. I look at their criminal background, their rental history. I call their current landlord. I look at the number of people that are going to be living in the house, even though I do not discriminate. I look at their intended length of stay. So if they tell me they're only going to be there 1 year, I'm not really interested. I want them there 3 or 4 years on a 1-year lease. That's because every time they move out, a tenant moves out, that's 3 or 4 weeks of vacancy for you. That's a month of lost rent. That's a lot of profit. So you want to ask that question, how long do you see yourself staying here? You want to meet with them face to face. You want to, of course, obey all fair housing laws. That's crucial. Now, along the same lines, the 6P is putting it all in writing with a good lease. So our leases are 12 to 18 months. Why are they longer than 12 months? Because if I'm signing a lease in December, I want it to be 18 months so that it expires in May or June. I want all my leases to expire in May or June. I get a little more rent in May or June, and I have more tenants looking at a property in May or June. And then after that 18-month lease expires, then we go year to year. So it always expires May or June. In the lease, I outline the landlord-tenant responsibilities. I always include gardening in the lease. So you want to build that into your rent. If it's $80 to $100 a month, build it into the rent. Don't have the tenant talk you into doing the gardening, because they won't. And it's unfair to your neighbors to have weeds, 3-4 feet high in the front yard. Then you always want to require renter's insurance from the tenant, because chances are, if you've been renting to tenants, you haven't been getting insurance. You must use the correct addendums with the lease. That includes mold, lead-based paint, and bed bugs here in California. Those are the 3 required addendums that will save you from a lot of liability down the road. We always include a damage addendum in the lease, so the tenant knows exactly what they're responsible for when they move out if things are damaged. We have our pet agreement in the lease. We have the Fremont Ordinance in the lease if they're in Fremont. And then we always include with the lease a 45-page tenant handbook, which is available to you if you come to my live seminars. They're an extended version of this. Then we always go over the lease face-to-face with the tenant. That's very important. Our lease has 41 sections. Each section has to be initialed by every tenant over 18. That way I know they've all read the lease and they understand it. Step number, this is a rental ordinance in Fremont. It's called RIDRO. It's very important you're familiar with this. Stands for Residential Rental Income Dispute Resolution Ordinance. Passed in 1997, it has 3 components. 1 increase in Fremont per year. We recommend a 90-day notice prior to a rent increase, and it must include certain language in the lease and in a rental increase. Otherwise, it can come back to bite you down the road. We also have rent control in California, but it does not affect you if you're the owner of a rental home. Only 2 to 4 units or apartments. And if you own a multi-family property in California, then rent control went into effect January 1st, 2020. In a nutshell, you can have no annual increase greater than 5% plus CPI increase, and you can't ask a tenant to leave the property without just cause. And just cause includes non-payment of rent, or you're selling the home, or you're moving back into the home. So it's very difficult to get a non-compliant, unruly tenant out of a multifamily property now in California without cause. Step 7, you want to pay the deposit. The 7P is get the tenant to pay the deposit. How much? Well, if it's a single family home or 2 to 4 units, 1 month's rent. You don't need 2 months rent, which California allows. That's just too much deposit. If it's more than 5 units, we only get half a month's rent. If they got credit issues, okay, normally I never make an exception on credit, but if one of the spouses has a 740 credit score and the other spouse has a 660 credit score, I might make an allowance if I get 2 months rent for the deposit. And then you never want to rent a home furnished, but if you do, you can get 2 months rent. Actually, 3 months in California is the maximum. You want to get a pet fee, not a deposit. You call it a fee. I always get a holding fee if I'm signing a lease. Either I get the security deposit or at least a non-refundable holding fee because the tenant's not moving in for a few weeks, but I've got the lease. I want some sort of security. And you never let a tenant say to you during the last month of the lease, oh, just use my security deposit. No, that's not what the security deposit's for. Get the last month's rent, use the full security deposit for any kind of deductions, because you will have some. Step number 8, you want to be prompt with maintenance request. So when somebody has a maintenance request, one of our residents, because I manage close to 500 properties, we get a lot of calls every day, our maintenance manager does, from residents. We first determine who's responsible. Now we look at the lease, because in the lease it says that if an appliance stops working, that's the owner's responsibility. But if the kitchen sink clogs up or the bathroom toilet, that's the tenant's responsibility. Then we try to help them over the phone. Oftentimes we can resolve the problem over the phone. If not, then we schedule a vendor promptly. Within 1 or 2 days, we want that maintenance request handled. And all of our vendors are on an agreement with our company. The agreement basically says they have to get out within 48 hours and they have to say and do the right things. They can't look at a problem and say, oh my gosh, the owner should have taken care of this months ago. We don't want the vendor to say something that would be disparaging about the owner or property management company. You rarely defer maintenance to the tenant. Don't let the tenant call you and say, hey, I've got it handled. I've got a friend that can do this plumbing job. No, you want to do it yourself. You want to get the plumber's invoice and his comments. Then you need to count on 3 to 4 maintenance issues per year, and set aside 1 month's rent each year for not just maintenance, or repairs rather, but maintenance like gardening and furnace maintenance, as well as rehab. A portion of your 1 month's rent you set aside each year should go to rehab. Step number 9, you want to probe or inspect the property once a year. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you cannot go into a home to inspect it in California. It's not legal. So it's the tenant has right to quiet enjoyment. There are privacy laws and you can only go in to their home if there's a maintenance issue or you're selling or renting the house the last 30 days. Other than that, you can't go in the home. That's why we write into our leases that the tenant will allow us to come in once a year for a property inspection because it's written in the lease and they've agreed to it. And during that annual inspection, as I mentioned, we write it into the lease. We go in at the 10-month mark. We check the smoke detectors. We look for any unauthorized pet, any unauthorized roommate. We change the furnace filters, which are very important. We look for any deferred maintenance. We actually have a 64-point checklist, 32 on the outside, 32 on the inside, that our property inspector covers. He rates each of them on a scale of 1 to 5. So it only takes 20 to 30 minutes. But it's very important that you get into your home once a year. I meet so many owners that haven't visited their rental home in 4 or 5 years. That is a recipe for disaster because you often will have tenants saying everything is fine, you don't need to come and look at anything because they don't want you to find things that are wrong with the house and maybe it will affect the rent of the tenant. So they're trying to keep you out of the house. You want to go in every year to look at it. Step number 10, the 10th P, is protect yourself. Make sure your tenant has renter's insurance. You have to have a good landlord policy. Also, on top of that policy, you want a good umbrella policy, a minimum of $1 million. It's only several $100s a year for a policy like that. Then I have a lot of owners, based on my recommendation, converting ownership of their property from their own personal names to an LLC, which is a limited liability company. And there are a lot of advantages liability-wise to having your rental in an LLC. God forbid your tenant slips, falls, hurts themselves, and sues you for everything you have. If your home is in an LLC, they can only sue you for the value of that asset. They can't sue you for anything outside of the rental home. Conversely, if your home's in an LLC and you get in a car accident and you're sued for everything you have, whoever's suing you can't sue you for your rental home. It's an LLC, it's separated from you personally. It's very easy to convert your home to an LLC. I recommend it. So then we come to step 11, which is profit. It's not a dirty word. In the rental home business, you have a lot of tax deductions. So many that maybe you're not aware of. All your repairs are tax deductible, your insurance. If you hire a property manager like myself, my fees are fully tax deductible. Your travel expenses to the home, your utilities, your HOA, your biggest tax deduction, depreciation. That is a huge tax write-off every year. Of course, your property taxes, the interest on your mortgage, if you have a mortgage, your landscaping, your gardening, your advertising, your legal, your home office, all these are tax deductions. Many of my owners, let's just say they have a $36,000 a year gross income, are able to write off $36,000 and get that income to zero and pay absolutely no tax. That's the beauty of rental property. You have not only appreciation, you have your rental income, but you have incredible tax deductions that you do not have with a primary residence. Step number 12, or excuse me, before we get to 12, why you might want to consider selling your home. The cap rate for your East Bay rental property is between 2 and 2.5%. That is a very important financial equation for you to know. Your cap rate is simply your net operating income of your rental home divided by what you could sell the home for today. And that gives you your capitalization rate. That's your return on investment. It's 2 to 2.5% if you own a rental home. That's one of the lowest cap rates of any kind of rental property in the entire United States. You can go outside of the Bay Area and find cap rates of 6 to 8%. In addition, you want to think about selling the home if you're sensing a prolonged flat period appreciation-wise. And if your home is geographically undesirable.
Do you mind going 2 back?
Nope.
So I hit 30, yeah. So just you sense a prolonged. So,
right here?
Yep.
Okay. So we're at 30 minutes right now.
Yeah.
All right. You sense a prolonged flat period. So in other words, the appreciation here in the East Bay has played out for your rental home for a period of years. That's when you want to consider getting a higher cap rate because you don't have the great appreciation. Or if your home is geographically undesirable, maybe you're a landlord who is out of state and are far away from your rental here in the East Bay. Or you have a rental property in the city of Hayward where the city is so tenant friendly and so restrictive for landlords. You may want to think of checking out of Hayward and selling your property. Or you own your rental property with siblings or partners that you don't see eye to eye with. It's another reason to sell your rental property and do what's called a 1031 exchange. Or you have no depreciation left on your property, or you want to increase the size of your rental holdings. Bottom line, you want more monthly income without additional risk. Step 12, here's the last P in our webinar, and that is a property manager will always, not most of the time, always make you more money in the long run. My fee for managing a rental house is 7.9%. It's 5.9% for 2 to 4 units, 4.9% for apartments. So whatever your gross income is, you're paying a property manager like me 7.9%. Or 5.5% when you consider it's a complete tax deduction. So if you're in the 30% tax bracket, you're only paying about 5.5% management fee. The government is paying the rest. That comes to about 19 days of rent out of 365 go to the company that's doing all the heavy lifting, and you're getting the other 350 days or 346 days of rent. We're going to get you optimum rent, not too high where we're squeezing the tenant and that causes problems, and not too low where we're leaving money on the table. You're going to have minimal vacancy with us. We're going to have the ideal tenant. We're going to enforce the lease. We're going to get you the rent on time. We're going to provide the best maintenance for your home with quality vendors. We're going to keep you out of court by saying and doing all the right things. All of these things add up to about 50 hours per year managing your home. Even more if we have to rent it. That's a lot of hours that need to be spent properly managing a rental home. And when you calculate what your time is worth, it definitely exceeds 5.5% of the rent. In addition, it's less wear and tear on you. As this woman says, hey, who says property management is stressful? I'm 38 and I feel great. So here's some contact information for my company and my services. And also, if you liked this little condensed 30-minute version of our webinar, we offer the full 2-hour seminar on the 12 basics of property management, which every 90 days at our office, we have 80 to 100 landlords show up, and the seminar is $59. We're going to cover all these topics in greater detail. I'm going to provide you with my lease, all my forms, everything you need to properly manage your house. We're going to include brunch, and you can RSVP at my cell phone, 510-996-3238 with a text. Just send me a text saying, sign me up for your next seminar. And we'll immediately provide you the date and reserve a spot for you. So that's my webinar. Thank you for watching. Happy landlording. Good luck.